What I've noticed when it comes to Norse mythology and Genshin, it is automatically tied to Khaenriah. This is accepted by a majority of the community, without question. There is also a common belief that the Abyss and Abyss Order is one and the same. But few have always believed the Abyss to be separate from the Abyss Order, and with Fontaine's story quest Ancient Colors, we learn that beings of Teyvat can be infused with abyssal energy, allowing them to use the form of abyssal being. This is seen with the transformation of Jacob into an Inquisitor Baptist. When the traveler asked about his affiliation to the Abyss Order, Jacob scoffs at the remark, making it clear that he has no dealings with the Abyss Order, despite his appearance. Then during the Khaenriah Archon quest, before the Abyss Order is even an idea, let alone formed, we encountered an Abyss Frost Herald, which I believe is another example, establishing a difference between the Abyss and Abyss Order. In the last act of the Masquerade of the Guilty, we are introduced to Skirk, Child's Master from the Abyss.
Right. So you don't know him. Sorry, I assumed you did. His name is Surtalogi.
I am unfamiliar with that name.
So Master isn't sufficiently famous.
She reveals to us the name of her master, surtalogi, and the community immediately believes him to be Khaenriah. With good reasons, of course. While trying to explain to us who her master is, she names two others for reference. The first to be named is the visionary, Vedrefalnir, and after is a familiar name, Rheindatri, also known as Gold, Albedo's creator. But does using gold as a reference mean surtalogi and Vedrefalnir are Khaenriah? As if to say all things related to Norse mythology is inherently tied to Khaenriah. Now I believe there is two possibilities. The first being that Khaenriah is the only representation for Norse mythology in Genshin. The other possibility is the connection to the Abyss, which brings up more questions. As of 4.2 there is no way to say which is true. So instead I will be focusing on how surtalogi might be a Khaenriah or denizen of the Abyss, based around the events in Fontaine and what little we learn from Skirk. Starting off with surtalogi being also known as the Foul. Something I think we all can agree on, which strongly suggests him as the creator of Foul Legacy, Child's Transformation. A transformation likely tied directly to one's emotions in the Abyss. Besides that is surtalogi's pet, the all-devouring narwhal. A pet that caused all the destruction in Fontaine. Then there is the reference to Rheindatri, which besides his name, is the strongest case for him being Khaenriah. Surtalogi, the Foul, created the Foul Legacy, owns a all-devouring beast, as a pet, and most importantly, has knowledge that far exceeds a sovereign, such as Nuvelet and his understanding of the Gnosis. The Foul would have to be a pretty extraordinary being to have such accomplishments. Personally I believe surtalogi to be a denizen of the Abyss, separate from the Abyss Order. But if surtalogi was Khaenriah, how could he obtain such knowledge? Could it be that his time in the Abyss, or is there another way to obtain knowledge for beings of Teyvat? Which leads me to the next figures connected to Norse mythology, but with no direct connection to Khaenriah, beyond speculation. Starting off with the World Tree or Minsel, connected to the Dendro Archon. Despite the direct connection to the current and former Dendro Archon, its name is grounded in Norse mythology and also shares the name of the last king of Khaenriah, King Irmin. How and why would a tree in Sumeru, which is a cultural representation of Egypt and the Middle East, have a world tree that is connected to Norse mythology, the cultural representation of Khaenriah? There is still a lot of questions surrounding the world tree. But the one that matters most at this time is its name. Surely there are world trees in the cultures that Sumeru represents, and if not, then why connect that world tree to Sumeru's lore? Only leaving us to question the reason behind its name. Which leaves us with two possibilities. The tree is directly tied to Khaenriah. Or it is not. But if it is, what does this mean for King Irmin? Did he plant the world tree? Did he discover it? What else could be the reason behind its name, in connection to the Khaenriah king? And how could Ermin discover the tree, or plant the world tree? Seeing how Khaenrians are basically human, only cursed with immortality after the cataclysm. For it to be named after Ermin, and be its one true and accepted name, even by an Archon, could only mean Ermin was the first to interact with it. But again, how could that be possible? With the Khaenrians' presumed average lifespan, before the cataclysm and the Dendro Archon. At first, I believed Ermin to be a sort of legacy name, which is a name that is passed down. But then I remembered the next figure related to Norse mythology having no direct ties to Khaenriah, let alone humans. This figure is known as the Dragon King, Nibelung. Being the original ruler of the world, only to have died in a war against the first invader. All of which we learned from Apep during Nahida's second story quest.
We all once believed in the distant past that only forbidden knowledge could give us enough power to defeat the heavenly principles. The Dragon King acquired the power of darkness from outside of this world, and led us in a fight against the order established by the outsiders. An unimaginable war took place into that, causing destruction on an unprecedented scale. The world itself was on the verge of collapse. In war, the victor would inherit the right to shape the world, while the losers must turn into ash. But I didn't give up on searching for a way to turn the tides, even after the death of the Dragon King.
Apep tells us that the Dragon King sought out forbidden knowledge to combat the usurper, but ultimately lost their life in that war, leaving the control of Teyvat in the hands of the usurper, the Primordial One. Despite this outcome, Apep continued on believing one day the Dragon King will return. So she continued the need for forbidden knowledge. Apep then speaks of the day where the king did indeed return, but in the time between, some dragons had died, others fled, and those that remained coexisted with the new lifeforms.
As I attempted to collect more forbidden knowledge from the corners of the world, as it was on the verge of collapse, I was stopped by the giant spike that fell from the sky. Sand dunes arose where there was only forest, and it was as if even Sumeru itself was trying to tell me that the era of the dragons was over. I still harbored deep regrets. By the time the Dragon King finally returned, the world had irrevocably changed. Some of the dragons have grown close to your kind, and have forgotten all about our hatred from when the world was taken from us. And some died, leaving behind nothing but their bones, while others chose to flee after experiencing pain and agony. But for me, the scales and will of the Dragon King still shine bright in my heart, even to this day.
She speaks no further of the king beyond that. But the way she brought up the current sovereign's predicament, when compared to the return of the king, sounds as if hope was lost, and the Dragon King abandoned any plan of challenging the throne, retreating somewhere far away from the usurper, and the world they created. Where exactly does Khaenriah reside again? Was it not the furthest edges of Teyvat, bordering the abyss? Did Apep not specifically say Nibelung died in that battle and then returned? Who was it that was reborn in human form again? Nubilet. What if Nibelung was reborn in a humanoid form, and this reborn Dragon King was now known as Ermin, the future king of Khaenriah? And in his journey to distance himself from Teyvat, he discovered the World Tree, founded a nation that rejected Celestia and its rule, priding itself on not being ruled by any subject of Celestia. Is that possible? For me, this seems to be the most likely possibility for Erminsul's definitive name. That would have had to exist long before the birth of the Dendro Archon, for them to recognize the World Tree as Erminsul and not some other name. Despite this, there still leaves the question of Nibelung, existing before Khaenriah while having its name rooted in Norse mythology. But Apep's name is rooted in Egyptian mythology, so this could simply be a case for Nibelung being even more connected to Khaenriah. Anyway, that's all of my thoughts. I was going to give a complete dive into the Abyss, but decided to focus on the Abyss versus the Abyss Order. Feel free to add to anything I missed or give me your own idea.